You've probably heard this before. Medieval children had no childhood, no toys, no school. They were just tiny adults, dressed like tiny adults, working like tiny adults from the moment they could walk. It's a compelling story. It's also almost entirely wrong. And the reason everyone still believes it comes down to one French historian, one book written in the 1960s, and 6 decades of nobody actually checking his work. This video is about what medieval children actually did all day. And I promise you, the real answer is stranger, darker, funnier, and more surprisingly modern than anything you've been told. We're going to cover the toys that archaeologists are still digging up, the schools nobody talks about, the jobs that will make your jaw drop, and the daily dangers that make modern parenting look like a luxury spa experience. Let's start with the myth, because it's important to understand just how wrong it is. In 1960, a French historian named Philippe Ariès published a book called Centuries of Childhood. His central argument was bold. Medieval society had no concept of childhood. Kids were just small adults. No toys, no play, no special treatment. They went straight from swaddled infants to miniature grown-ups the moment they could function independently. This idea spread everywhere. Into textbooks, into documentaries, into the cultural background noise that most of us absorbed without questioning. There was just one problem. Nobody had actually dug up the ground yet. Because when archaeologists started excavating medieval London in the late 20th century, they found something that completely demolished Arias's thesis. Hundreds of children's toys, pewter figurines, miniature knights, tiny horses, whistles shaped like human heads with movable parts, cast from molds, mass-produced. The medieval equivalent of a Happy Meal toy sitting in the ground for 700 years, waiting for someone to find it. The Museum of London has them on display right now. A pewter bird with a movable tongue, a whistle shaped like a human face. These aren't one-off curiosities. They're evidence of an entire industry. Someone was manufacturing children's toys at scale in medieval England. And the historian who really drove this home, the person who rebuilt the entire field, is a scholar named Nicholas Orme. His book Medieval Children is the spine of everything you're about to hear. But here's where it gets genuinely strange. These toys weren't sold in toy shops. They were sold at pilgrimage shrines, alongside holy relics and religious souvenirs, because the same workshops that cast pilgrim badges, little pewter tokens people bought to prove they'd visited a sacred site, also cast children's toys. Same molds, same craftsmen, same production line, a child's hobby horse and a holy relic trinket made on the same day by the same hands. And some of those toys had inscriptions. Pilgrim whistles worn around children's necks sometimes carried the phrase Ave Maria on one side, deeply devout, very pious, and on the other side, blâmi, blow me, a double entendre joke, literally cast into the pewter. Medieval children's toys had dirty jokes built into them. That's important. But if you think that's the most surprising thing about medieval childhood, we're just getting started. Let's talk about school. Because the no-school myth is just as wrong as the no-toys myth, and in some ways, it's even more interesting. Medieval England had at least 7 distinct types of schools: parish schools, song schools attached to cathedrals, almonry schools connected to monasteries, chantry schools, guild schools, preparatory grammar schools, full grammar schools. The idea that medieval children simply had no access to education is not just wrong. It's the opposite of wrong. Some of them had too much school. Medieval school days could last more than 12 hours. Classes could have over 100 boys in a single room. And discipline was not a gentle tap on the wrist. Beating was standard pedagogy, not as punishment for bad behavior. As standard teaching method, you learned your Latin conjugations, or you got hit. That was the system. Song schools are particularly fascinating. The basic curriculum was plain song, simple chant. But the advanced subject, what you worked toward, was polyphony, multi-part harmony. A 10-year-old medieval choir boy was being trained in what we would now call music theory at conservatory level. These kids were performing complex harmonic arrangements before they hit puberty. And if you were academically gifted enough, you could start at Oxford or Cambridge as young as 13. The great medieval universities were, by modern standards, functioning as advanced secondary schools. The medieval undergraduate was a child. But here's what I find most fascinating about medieval education. It wasn't universal. It was almost exclusively for boys. Girls learned at home from their mothers, and what they learned was domestic management, textile work, and if they were lucky, basic literacy from a local priest or a nun. The gap between what a medieval boys' day looked like and what a medieval girls' day looked like was enormous, and we'll come back to that. Because the jobs medieval children did, The actual daily labor, that's where things get genuinely jaw-dropping. Boys as young as 7 had professional responsibilities, not helping out around the house. Actual jobs. One of the most common was bird scaring. You went out into the fields at dawn with a bell, a gong, or a rattle, and you spent the day making noise to keep birds off the crops. Medieval farmers actually preferred this to scarecrows. A live child with a noisemaker was considered more effective than a straw effigy. So if you've ever wondered what a medieval 7-year-old did all day in spring, they were the scarecrow. Older children removed stones from fields, helped with planting and harvest, tended animals, and there were actual legal frameworks around this. Village rules specified that the easy work of gleaning, picking up dropped grain after harvest, was reserved specifically for, and I'm quoting here, the young, the old, and those who are decrepit and unable to work. Children had a legally protected category of light labor. The medieval legal system recognized them as a distinct group requiring accommodation. Apprenticeships usually began around 13 or 14. But municipal authorities in London kept having to pass rules to stop families from binding younger children. A real surviving complaint involves a boy named John Pye, who protested that his apprenticeship had been registered when he was, and this is his phrasing, but XJ-year-old. 11 years old, too young under city ordinance. He knew his rights. He complained in writing, and his complaint survived. That's important, but none of this captures what a medieval child's day actually felt like. For that, you need to look at how they played. And this is where medieval childhood gets genuinely weird and wonderful. Blind man's buff existed in the medieval period, but it was more violent than the version you know. The blindfolded child wore an animal head mask, got spun around 3 times, and had to identify other players by touch alone, not gently, by grabbing them. Hot Cockles was a Christmas party game. One player knelt blindfolded with their head in another player's lap. Others struck them from behind. They had to guess who hit them. This was considered festive entertainment. King by Your Leave was a medieval combination of hide-and-seek and musical chairs. One child sat blindfolded in the center. Others hid. While the king hunted, any player who could sneak back and steal the king's seat became the new king. Medieval children invented stealth mechanics, and every December, English cathedrals did something extraordinary. They elected a boy bishop, usually a chorister, a choir boy. He was dressed in full bishop's robes, mitre, crozier, the whole regalia. From St. Nicholas's feast on December 6th to Holy Innocents' Day on December 28th, he ran ceremonial services. He blessed the people of the town. He gave sermons. Some of those sermons survive in writing. The actual bishop ritually stepped down during the singing of a specific line, "He hath put down the mighty from their seat." For 3 weeks, a child held symbolic religious authority over an entire community. Medieval society absolutely had a concept of childhood. It just expressed it in ways we don't always recognize. Now, I have to tell you the dark part, because it's real, and it matters. Coroner's records from medieval England paint a picture that is genuinely harrowing. More than 1/3 of medieval English children listed in those records died from fires, specifically from cradles placed too close to hearths. The unattended cradle near the open fire was the leading killer of toddlers. Not disease, not war, the fireplace. Drowning made up over 50% of all childhood accident reports. Medieval children spent their days near wells, streams, ponds, ditches, and watering troughs. Water was statistically their most dangerous environment. And the records show something even more specific. Fatal accidents to small girls clustered around firesides and wells. Fatal accidents to small boys happened in their fathers' working spaces. Children were already absorbing adult gender roles by age 3 or 4, and dying along the same gendered lines. Chaucer mentions, almost in passing, a sow eating a baby. Modern readers find this horrifying and bizarre. It wasn't fantastical. Pigs roaming village streets were a documented and recurring threat to unattended infants. It appears in coroner's records, multiple times. Medieval childhood was not gentle, it was not protected, and the people who lived it knew that, which is maybe why the moments of play, the pewter toys, the boy bishop, the dirty jokes cast into pilgrim whistles feel so charged with meaning when you look at them closely. If you're finding this as fascinating as I am, there's a whole connected world here. The channel has videos on what medieval adults ate, how they slept, and what daily life looked like for people at every level of society. Worth watching after this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the kind of content we make. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Let me leave you with one last thing. Medieval babies had rattles. Small, round, filled with pebbles or dried seeds. They look almost identical to modern baby rattles. But according to medieval parents, the rattle wasn't primarily a toy. Its primary function was to scare away evil spirits. When a medieval baby shook a rattle, they weren't just playing. They were performing a ritual to keep demons from possessing them. So let's recap what we actually know. Medieval children had mass-produced toys sold at markets and pilgrimage shrines, with dirty jokes cast into them. They had at least 7 types of schools, some with 12-hour days and beatings as standard teaching. They worked real jobs as young as 7, with legal protections built around their limitations. They played games that were more violent than anything we'd allow today, and they lived in an environment where the fireplace, the nearest pond, and the family pig were all genuine threats to their survival. Felipe Arias said medieval people had no concept of childhood. The ground disagreed. In every pewter toy, every boy bishop sermon, every complaint filed by an 11-year-old apprentice who knew his rights, every single one of those is a medieval child saying, "We were here. We played. We learned. We worked. We were afraid. We were children.